All right, in order for this story to make sense, I'll probably have to start from the beginning. I grew up in a town that's not that safe. One out of five of your friends was probably in a gang, and you knew of somebody either A, getting into a fight, B, going to jail, or C, not being with us anymore. Everybody kind of knew that as the normal, um, and I never knew otherwise because that was the environment that I was around. I thought that was normal. I only found out when I was older, when I was talking about stories back in the days with some of my coworkers, and I had mentioned a story about, having to do locker inspections and how they used to bring sniffer dogs in our school, and then do like metal detection, like at random, and they'd have you all line up by the lockers, and I was kind of cracking a joke about it, and people kind of looked at me like, "You're joking, right?" And I'm like, "Ah, yeah, that was crazy, right? How we all used to do that, haha." And they were like, "No, that's not normal." It's not as severe as, I guess. I'm already like trying to make excuses for it because I'm trying to say it's not that bad because obviously I grew up in it and that's what I knew. But to someone else who wasn't in that environment, they're going to be like, "You're crazy. That doesn't sound normal." So it wasn't the greatest neighborhood and it wasn't the worst neighborhood. Growing up in school, I had teachers straight up tell me that I wasn't going to amount to anything. One teacher said that I was going to be a high school dropout and I would end up pregnant and single, like a Hispanic, barefoot and pregnant type of stereotype, is basically what he said, more or less. And I remember I got so pissed and I was like, you know, I'm gonna grow up and get a job and make more money than you and I'll show you, that was in my head, kind of thing. So, I did what anybody would do. I buckled down and 2 weeks later I dropped out. I wasn't fond of getting up in the morning. I'm still not a morning person. And I think that was my major downfall. It wasn't a matter of the school environment. Weirdly enough, you would think that would be the one thing that kind of prevented me from going to school. It was getting up in the morning. I hated it. I thought to myself, why can't we have night school? I'll go to school if it's at night. But yeah, so I dropped out, and funny enough, I went ahead the year I was supposed to really graduate. I ended up graduating. I ended up getting my GED the year I was supposed to graduate. I went to night school and I got my GED. So, I mean, it wasn't a matter of, I wasn't smart enough. I did not want to get up in the morning. So then, after I got my GED, like everything was great. And I kind of dabbled in working. I was, working from time to time, but, I was young. I'm 18 years old. I just got my GED, I'm hanging out with my friends, like dabbled in jobs here or there. I'd work for a month and get a couple paychecks and quit, get another job, get a few paychecks and quit. Like that was like the norm. I'd have enough money to go hang out with my friends. So that's what I normally did. And then, I always had it drilled in my head what that, teacher told me, you're going to amount to nothing. And, I started thinking about, my future and, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna do something with my life. I am not going to let what he said dictate my future. So naturally, what I ended up doing was I got pregnant. Fell in love at a young age and got pregnant, and went ahead and got married at a young age. We were acting as adults when we were teenagers still. But you know how teenagers think, we think we know everything. So yeah, I had my daughter at 19 years old. And, I wanted to try my hardest to make that work just because of the fact that I did not want to be a stereotype. I really didn't. So I thought to myself, I got to prove to everybody that I can do this. I don't know who everybody is it's just in my head. Everyone, no one's ever said anything to me about it except that teacher from like years ago who doesn't even know I exist anymore. But it's just strange how that's instilled in your head. So anybody that's watching that is in the school system, watch what you say to kids because it affects them more than you'll ever know. So there's my public service announcement for that. But yeah, so when I got had my baby, I one day decided, hey, I need to actually get a real job now that I have a kid. And when I say one day I decided, my mom literally told me like, hey, you're not going to be on my insurance anymore. You need a full-time job and take care of yourself. So I was like, well, I guess I got to get a job now. So I was working full-time and going to school full-time. And I buckled down and did what I had to do and incurred a lot of debt because when you're a teen and you don't know anything, you start signing a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense. So long story short, I incurred a lot of loans, a lot of student loans. And I did what anybody that gets married and has a kid does. I bought a house when I didn't have enough money. And to put this in perspective, I bought the house in 2006. And guess what happened in 2008? Yes, you guessed it. The housing market crash. It didn't really dawn on me that I was a part of that crash because I still had my house. You know what I mean? So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, that's for people that couldn't afford it. Not knowing that, yeah, that's you, dummy. You can't afford this either. It was a brand new townhouse that I paid way over the allotted amount for, but I really wanted it. It was brand new. So we bought it, and it was one of those like stupid 80-20 loans. So you pay 80% of your loan is fixed and the other 20% is variable. It's the like shittiest rate you could get. So I was in debt over my eyeballs to the tune of 180 grand when you factor everything in. And I'm not talking about, we were going on vacations and like buying brand new cars and like this was just like normal stuff. Like I'm trying to go to the doctor. I'm trying to pay my, car insurance, trying to pay my expensive ass mortgage, trying to take care of a kid. Like we didn't have like high income jobs. We were like very average. We were both in, manufacturing type jobs, and you're hourly and you get a max amount. And it's not like these are the kinds of jobs where you go to your boss and you're like, hey, I deserve a raise because I did XYZ productivity. They don't really give a shit about that. That's just where you're capped at. That's how it is. 2009 was an interesting year. That year, um, my husband and I that year decided to call it quits. He actually moved out. Um, During that year, I believe it was the same year, that was when I got laid off. I do remember not having enough money. I remember that part. But 2009, I believe it was the year that it was an actual like hardcore layoff. I remember people were getting uh, manila envelopes. We're all getting called in one at a time. And I knew what was happening. I could kind of see it in the paperwork. I mean, you're building and everything's saying it's going to stock and not an actual customer. I mean, you kind of connect the dots. And yeah, that was the day they were pulling us in one by one. Some people were crying. And we're all different age ranges. And this time I'm in my 20s, right? So people are different age ranges. Some people are, close to retirement. They may be the only breadwinner in the family. Some were married couples that actually like work together. If one of your family members works there, then they all kind of work there. And it was not a good sight to see. I mean, everybody was upset. Some people were in shock. when it was my turn to go up in there, I kind of already went through all the emotions. Like, I mean, you see people coming in and out of the room. I mean, it's just like, I'm not going to act surprised. I know what's in the damn envelope. And it was a union shop. So I would actually be on call, is what you would call it, on call. So if production picked up, based on my particular badge number of when I was hired, my hire date, if they hired back X amount of people, you would go back in a certain order. So I was on call to be called back to work if things picked up, and I had about 6 months. So in my head, I was still kind of thinking of it in terms of like a furlough. I don't know, maybe I was kind of in shock and I didn't know it, because I kind of was like, all right, yeah, sure, thanks, here's a packet. And he's like, do you have any questions for me? And I was like, well, I don't have a job, right? So I guess that's it. I fully thought that they were going to call me back. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I just didn't think that I was going to not work there anymore. I just thought it was going to be like a month or two and they were going to call me back. So I really didn't spend that much time looking for work. I did like the bare minimum that was required in order for me to get my unemployment. I went and I used my unemployment during that time to spend, with my daughter and paying bills. And, I did look for work, but it was casually. I'm going to be honest. I didn't really put much effort into it. I just did the bare minimum. I did my check-ins and, gave them my information on, who I applied to and things like that. But it wasn't really a whole lot of effort because, like I said, I fully intended on going back to work. So, as I mentioned before, it was only 6 months that I had before, like, after 6 months, you're no longer an employee. Like, they can't call you back anymore. You're removed from the union. You're not on the list anymore. They won't call you back. I got laid off in June. And then in November, Thanksgiving was rolling around, right? Bills were really starting to creep up. I was able to like make ends meet little by little, but I really wouldn't be able to make ends meet because I don't even have my unemployment check anymore. And it was going to run out because it was like during that time where a lot of people were getting laid off and there was like this huge extension on unemployment. I forget what happened that year, but a lot of people got extensions for like more than the allotted normal amount of time. So, Thanksgiving Day, right? I was with my family and I got a phone call and it was one of the guys that I worked with at work, just a guy that we hired in with each other. So he calls me and he's like, hey, what's up? I just wanted to say, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family. And I actually just wanted to call you real quick to see if you heard anything from work. And I said, no, like I haven't heard anything. And he was like, well, just letting you know, I just got a call. So if I got a call, that means you got a call. Like I said, we hired in the same day and it goes by like date of hire. So I was like, oh, okay, so it's Thanksgiving, right? So I'm like, oh man, like obviously they're not open Thanksgiving Day. They're not open Black Friday. So I had to wait till Monday. So then the 6 months was up, by the way, the following week. I think it was like, I don't know, maybe that Thursday the following week or something, whatever the 6 months were. It was like coming close. I said, hey, I just got I'm not really sure if anybody's trying to get a hold of me, but I just got a call from one of the people I hired in with. He got a call. So I just wanted to see if, anybody's trying to contact me. I'm just trying to see where I'm at on the list. And they asked for my information. And then they said, yeah, we've been trying to get a hold of you. And I said, no one's contacted me. And then, they mentioned, yeah, we sent you a letter and we called you. Well, long story short, they ended up sending the letter to a previous address, and then the phone number I had on file was from a previous number. They ended up telling me that, yeah, your start date is on Thursday. And if you don't go in to your work to go I have to do like a health and fitness test. I got to go into the nurse's office and go do some stuff. Well, my start date was that Thursday. I called in on Monday, and I had to call my work that same day and schedule a nurse's visit prior to my start. If I would have waited like even a day, they probably would have just been like, no, we just moved on to the next person. So by some act of God, I got my job back. And that was pretty much the thing that shook me loose on I got to get my shit together, right? Because that could happen at any given time. Again, and maybe this time they won't, hire me back. I put everything from smallest to largest. I started to get really heavily involved with Dave Ramsey, doing the baby steps. I didn't follow it exactly, like I'm still, he says eat rice and beans, like I'm Hispanic. I eat rice and beans all the freaking time. It gets played out. I eat that normally. That's not poor people food. That's just my people's food. So I started making myself lists when I go to the store. My daughter can remember this. We would have a list, and my at the time my weekly budget was $100, right? So I would have everything on the list that I needed, and then I would push the cart, and then I would ask my daughter to go grab whatever item off the shelf. She'd tell me the price, and I'd plug it in my phone, and I'd add it all up. And if we got close to $100 because of taxes, I would have to put something back. But that's how we shopped. And little by little, I would just take whatever extra I had and put it towards the next loan. And I just kept doing that. And I swear, it felt like nothing mattered, no matter how much money I put on it. And it looks the same. I went ahead and I just started really figuring it out. And I seen some stupid debts. Like some of them were so dumb. When I sat down and looked at my student loans, I had 13 different loans, right? When I really sat down and looked at them, I pulled it up on the website and it was 13 different ones. And I think the smallest one was $50 and I was paying the minimum for it. It was I don't know, $1.17 or something stupid. I was just come on, why didn't I just pay that off? But this is the type of shit that I'm talking about that I didn't take it seriously enough to really look at how easy it was to just, bam, now I don't have any debt I don't have this loan anymore. It's done. Pay it, be over with. So I started to get pissed. And when I say I get pissed, that's when I usually have change. Normally people, they have these, epiphany moments and they're like, oh, I get it, the stars align, everything's great. For me, if I don't get pissed off, it does not register. Here's an example. I used to smoke for years. I smoked since I was, I want to say 16 years old. And I remember, when I started working at, this company that I'm talking about, this was around the time where you could still smoke inside, right? I remember it was around the time when the smoking law started to change, and then they slowly pushed us out. They gave us those little smoking designated sections, and then they gave us those little smoking huts, and then sooner or later they just said smoking's banned. You can't smoke here anymore. So I went ahead and I started to use e-cigarettes, right? And they even banned those. So then I just left my e-cigarette in my car. So when I get out of work, I could have my smoke after work. So I remember one day it was super cold. I live in Illinois, so we get below zero weather. And I remember I had a very stressful day. So that particular day, like I said, I was super pissed off because I just had a stressful day. So I didn't wait for my car to warm up. As I was sitting in the car warming it up because it was so cold, I was like, oh, let me just take one hit, so I can take the edge off, so I can have my vape. So then I take a long swig of this, right? When I say swig, it was an actual swig because that shit did not vaporize. I pretty much swallowed a gulp of this nasty, whatever the hell that liquid is that's supposed to be vape. So I pretty much choked it up. I was so pissed, mad. All I did was just chuck that thing on the floor. And I said, I'm not smoking that anymore. And literally that's all it took. I never smoked again after that. I didn't buy any more e-cigs. I'm not a smoker. Since that day, I stopped smoking. Normally people say like, "Oh, I quit for my health and I quit because, I care about my lungs and my body." No, I just quit because it pissed me off. But that's what I mean when I say I need to get pissed off about something. And that ended up happening to me, when I really started to like look into my finances and thought to myself, you know what, I'm so freaking tired of being broke. I'm tired of not knowing where my money goes. I'm tired of not being able to go on vacation. Whatever extra money I had, I put it towards, the next, debt from smallest to large. I just kept doing it. And my next move was I needed to get rid of my house because I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford it. I knew it. Like I couldn't afford it anyway. I was just hanging on to the house because I wanted my daughter to not go through the same school district that I went through. The school district that she was in, and I should probably back up. We ended up buying a house that was closer to my job, which is not in the same school district. So she did not grow up in the same elements as I did. She grew up in, where the streets are clean and, you didn't have gunshots and you didn't hear sirens. Before I knew it, like right around 2017 is when we got the announcement at my work that not only were going to get laid off, but they were closing the facility. Like they were, as they put it, downsizing their footprint. Granted, they have other facilities all around the world, but that particular facility has been there. Pretty much, they let us know way in advance, like, hey, we're closing. So then in my mind, I'm thinking, this is it. Like, this is why I've been doing what I'm doing. So now I had an emergency fund. I was paying down my debt. You're going to look down one day and see that your debt, that was a huge mountain that you felt like you couldn't overcome, is now this tiny little hill that you can just hop over with one foot. And I don't like stress about bills anymore. I used to sit down and I used to like get so stressed and high anxiety because I didn't have any money, and now it's just kind of like an inconvenience. Like I'm just like, I gotta go do bills. And it's just a matter of like setting up the dates. And still to this day, it's hard for me to comprehend that I thought I was going to have student loans until, my last days on this planet. And when I saw that it was over with, it was done. Like my checks now that I get, I can do whatever I want with. I mean, I invest majority of it now, but without all that discipline, like I wouldn't have been able to get ahead as I have. So this is just a story for people to understand that even if it feels hard, even if it feels like it's too much, just keep doing it. You're gonna get there. It's just a matter of time. The more you do the same actions, the more you consistently pay it down, it'll just get easier. For anybody that this story resonated with, hang in there.